cells are injected into a conversation, it's usually related to the promise they hold for regeneration and healing. But research is finding fault with them when it comes to cancer.
A stem cell, by definition, is a cell that's able to give rise to every other cell in the human body, as well as to itself. So it has the ability to recreate itself and procreate other daughter cells. There are good stem cells, and then there are bad cells, and that's what we're finding out.
Experts believe at the heart of every tumor there may be a handful of bad stem cells, which keep manufacturing malignant tissue. It explains the reappearance of cancer after doctors thought it was gone.
The stem cell theory may explain that, in that there are some cells that don't respond to chemotherapy, and even though you eliminate all the surrounding cancer cells, you're left with a sort of nucleus of stem cells that are malignant.
This opens up an opportunity in cancer. A new strategy is to identify cancer stem cells and target them directly. The hope is if they're destroyed, the cancer will stop replicating.
I don't know if it's going to take just eliminating the source and letting the rest of the cells be destroyed by your immune system, or the cells just die as they age. But I do know right now we can eliminate the bulk of the tumor, and we're left with this little seed. If we can find out where that is and find out how to hit it, we will win this fight.
Cancer stem cells have been identified in some forms of disease. The next step is figuring how to target them for destruction. For Lee Memorial Health System, I'm Amy Osher.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back from lunch hour. This is, of course, the 44th Annual Cancer Control Society Convention, Labor Day weekend 2016. Really appreciate your being here and your attention. And the program, of course, you'll see that G. Edward Griffin is on the program. The emergency, and he's going to say hello, acknowledge that he's on the program, and then he'll give it back to me, and then I'll introduce the speaker after that. Of course, Ed Griffin has been not only a friend, colleague for so many years, and again, one of the pioneers in this movement. So, Ed, let me just introduce you, let you take over.
All right. Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I guess you heard the good news that I'm really not the speaker today. There's some good news and some bad news. First of all, I should explain that. Even though I'm standing here and I may look fairly normal, I'm suffering from a world-class case of shingles. And any of you folks that have had that or heard about it, it's no fun. So I didn't think I'd be here at all today. In fact, I told Lorraine a couple of weeks ago, I said, you better get somebody up to take my space because I'm not going to be able to come. And if I came, I wouldn't be able to give a speech. So she wisely did that. But here I am, and I have to tell you, the reason I'm here is your next speaker. And because he'll be talking, I presume, about why that is so, but he introduced me to a therapy that has actually helped me to the point where I can come here and stumble along. So we have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that I am not going to be delivering a boring 30-minute presentation. The bad news is I've just delivered a boring 2-minute presentation. And with that, I'll just say something about cancer. I have been a strong advocate of the alternative approach to cancer. Ever since I was introduced to the topic way back in 1973, I was first introduced to it, and I finished my book, World Without Cancer, in 1974. And if anybody here wants to know what I think about that, well, then the book is available, and we got some videos, so I say go check it out. But the message that I have to deliver is that cancer is not to be feared. Cancer is, everybody has cancer as I see it. Cancer is merely a breakdown in the normal healing process. And if you heal, you have that process working. It's when you have certain things wrong, you're not getting the right nutrition, or you're subject to certain toxic environments that your body is unable to heal correctly, then you go into what I would call an overhealing mode, and that's what we call cancer. So you don't have to dread cancer. What you have to dread is what happens to your body when it loses its ability to heal. So that's my message, and if you want to know more about that, you can find it in my book. So that's it. That's the end of my 3-minute boring presentation. Thank you.
Ed, thank you so much. And I know personally, his World Without Cancer was my primer into the world of alternative cancer therapies, and specifically the vitamin theory of cancer, vitamin deficiency. And so we certainly owe a real debt of gratitude to Ed Griffin and his wife, Patricia Griffin, who's registered nurse. And we do have their books available, I believe, at the Cancer Book House. Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Brad Weeks, and I believe I've known Brad for probably 20 years, both as he gives presentations all over the United States, all over the world. Please read all the information about him in the biographies and contact information as well. He does have a booth in the other room. And there's been some talks today on stem cells. He's going to also talk about that and give some solutions. And I know you'll talk about Ed Griffin's progress and the solution to his problem. And Brad, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much for being here.
Right. Perfect. Greetings, everybody. After lunch, glad to be here. All right, thank you. You know, it shouldn't go without being stressed how amazing it is that Lorraine and Frank and the whole team here has been doing this for 44 years. Huh? When they got started, if you had cancer, it wasn't sure whether you'd hear about options. Today, I guarantee anybody who gets cancer, one of the first things they do is they pay attention to alternative integrative therapies, thanks to efforts like this. So congratulations on being here, everybody. Now, I'm going to try to keep this short, and I'm going to talk about cancer stem cells, which is what I always talk about. So, I mean, my kids get tired hearing about this. So I'm going to be brief because I've given you at about the 10th slide all the references, all the YouTubes, all the videos, all the prior lectures. Because my target, I mean, I told Lorraine what I wanted to talk about, and she said, well, can't you talk about cancer stem cells? So I'm going to do cancer stem cells, but then I got a big surprise for you. First of all, Max Witcher is a guru in cancer research. There's not an alternative bone in his body. University of Michigan Comprehensive Cancer Center, and he says chemotherapy and radiation make your cancer worse. Why? If you can get people to ask the wrong question, says Thomas Pynchon, the answer doesn't matter. The wrong question, folks, is how to kill cancer tumor cells. The right question is how to kill cancer stem cells. Cancer tumor cells are like the innocent bystanders at a rally. The cancer stem cells are the ringleaders, the agitators, cancer progenitor cells. Chemotherapy and radiation make cancer worse because they stimulate the ringleaders, they stimulate the cancer stem cells to be more numerous and more virulent. That's why cancer comes back, because chemo and radiation just kills the cancer tumor cell, the relatively harmless cell, and it makes the cancer stem cell, the lethal cell, more numerous and more virulent. Even if it's IPT, which I practiced for many years, that's still chemotherapy. It still only kills the cancer tumor cells. It still makes the cancer stem cells more numerous and more virulent. Now, 2014, December, this article hit Nature magazine. This is an earthquake in oncology. They said, basically, in Nature magazine, which is the premier scientific journal, that when you do chemotherapy, what you do is you selectively enrich the cancer stem cells. You make the cancer stem cells, it's like kicking a hornet's nest. Chemotherapy does that. And so they said, when you do that, you recruit quiescent or standing by stem cells, and they become cancer stem cells. Cancer stem cells are made from stem cells, which I describe as kind of uncommitted undergraduates, right? They don't know what they're going to major in. A stem cell can become a heart tissue, it can become a gastric tissue, it can become anything. But if you injure the tumor, It becomes injured tissue. It recruits stem cells to become cancer stem cells. This is going to go over your head. I see some quizzical glances, but this is all described in some of the things I'm sharing. This article goes on to say that when you give chemotherapy, it does do apoptosis to the cancer tumor cells, but it promotes the cancer stem cells. This should be a death knell to chemotherapy. This article should make all oncologists stop what they're doing. And of course, it didn't happen that way, but watch this. It's a COX-2-mediated wound response, meaning the tissue that's injured recruits stem cells, and they become cancer stem cells. So the take-home message from this Nature magazine was chemotherapy stimulates cancer stem cells and the cancer returns. To treat the stem cells, you need anti-inflammatory agents. They recommended Celebrex. They recommended an arthritis drug in Nature to treat cancer, an anti-inflammatory. That's all described here at this website. The anti-inflammatory agents also shut down metastatic process. If you want to shut down metastasis, you need an anti-inflammatory. And then they recommend celecoxib, which is Celebrex, but that's got a lot of bad toxicity, kidney, renal, and so forth, liver. And then the anti-inflammatory diet is powerful medicine. There's the reference. And if you eat the whole crushed anti-inflammatory seeds, that's the most cost-effective way to address cancer. It was an honor to call up Ed Griffin, a hero of mine, and say, Ed, I understand you got shingles. Let me help you. I sent him a product called Sol, which is made from black cumin seed, black raspberry seed, Chardonnay grape seed. He'd had 10 weeks of excruciating shingles pain. God bless him. He's here with his wife, Pat, today, and it's an honor to meet him after all these years. Now, we all know this. Chemotherapy doesn't work, never did work. This is published in Clinical Oncology. This is not an alternative journal. Clinical Oncology 2004. You get a 2.3% benefit with chemotherapy in Australia, 2.1% benefit in America. Now, I practiced on an island off the coast of Seattle. If you were my patient and you're going to take the ferry home, and I said to you, yeah, take the ferry, you've got a 2.1% chance of making it. Would you take the ferry home? No. It's amazing that oncologists have been selling chemotherapy. Now, I mentioned that the cancer secretes an SOS, a call for help. That's an inflammatory cytokine message, interleukin 6. So if you want to make sure the cancer doesn't recruit cancer stem cells, you need an anti-inflammatory agent to block the inflammatory cytokine. Okay? That's why aspirin has been shown to be very beneficial in cancer. And that's why the Nature article pulled up Celebrex and said, use Celebrex. So I'm going to tell you that people who are dealing with cancer and accept the standard of care in oncology, and they have survived not because of the chemo and radiation. They have survived despite the chemo and radiation. Those are fighting words. But it's not just me. It's the top researchers in oncology today are saying this. So I tell people, don't fear cancer, fear your oncologist. Now, the oncologists, to a person, are well-intended, good people. Please understand this. It takes a lot of courage to go into oncology. These are good people, but they have terrible tools at their disposal, and they're constrained to offer only the standard of care. And that's the problem. They're good people. They just have been given terrible instruments, and they are not allowed to vary. But they're seldom right, and they're never in doubt. And like the surgeon who says, you know, Mrs. Jones, the surgery was a success, but your husband died, the oncologist will literally think that he or she has done a good job if they've killed the cancer, whether you're ravaged or not. So the oncologist is typically uninformed on health and nutrition and immune enhancement. One take-home message is, if your oncologist is giving you opioids, he or she either doesn't know that opioids suppress the immune system, or they've given up on you getting well. Tell them to give you methadone instead. Pain relief without immune-suppressing opioids. Okay, so here are the prior lectures. I'm not going to tell you more. I'm just telling you chemo and radiation makes your cancer worse. Anybody you know who's getting chemo and radiation, Max Witcha, who I mentioned earlier, on a telephone conversation told me, in my lifetime, Brad, oncologists will no longer give chemo and radiation, and he's not a spring chicken. So get tomorrow's medicine today. Here's he's developed an anti-inflammatory set of agents for Oncomed, aspirin, metformin, Antabuse. Antabuse shuts down cancer stem cells. Celecoxib, of course. Dr. Detox is a product available from Safa Lab, which is excellent for going after cancer stem cells. Oxyacyst, same way. Natural agents, quercetin, berberine, vitamin D3, they all attack cancer stem cells. Lastly, Seeds of Eden is a group of these natural seeds that we talk about. So the future of cancer care is anti-inflammatories. This product, which we gave to Ed just now, has a synergistic blend of black cumin seed, black raspberry seed, and Chardonnay grape. Seeds are bitter, so you don't eat seeds, so you sweeten them here with xylitol and ribose. Those are 5 carbon sugars that lower blood sugar, available here. Now, 4 questions for your oncologist. This is the take-home message. Say to your oncologist when you are with them, why are you not recommending any safe anti-inflammatory agents? And the answer is because anti-inflammatory agents have a very narrow window of safety. Too much aspirin will kill you. Tylenol, thousands of suicides a year with Tylenol. So the oncologist is afraid to tell you to take anti-inflammatories because they're afraid you might overdose and die. But you ask your oncologist, given the fact that so much literature points to aspirin and all sorts of anti-inflammatory agents helping with cancer, why aren't you recommending an anti-inflammatory? Ask that question. Number 2, why do you offer us chemotherapy patients candy and cake and all sorts of stuff? Why do you say any calorie is a good calorie? That flies in the face of biochemistry. Cancer loves sugar. Don't eat sugar if you're fighting cancer. Thirdly, what are you going to recommend to enhance my health while you're killing my cancer cells? They don't really know. That's why you have to come to conferences like this. And lastly, what are your recommended treatments going to do to my cancer stem cells? The ringleaders. What are your treatments going to do to my cancer stem cells? They're going to give you 2 looks. One is kind of a deer in the headlights. What's a cancer stem cell? And they're not keeping up with the literature. Now, when I say not keeping up with the literature, I'm going to go back here. It's not here. But the top oncologists are endorsing cancer stem cells. So if they don't know what it is, they're not keeping up with the literature. But often, instead of the deer in the headlights look, they'll give you a, oh, I'm busted, oh, darn it. I wish he hadn't asked me about cancer stem cells because now you know the game. So ask those questions. Now here's that quote. This is a private conversation. This fellow is an amazing scientist. And he said, in my lifetime, oncologists will no longer use chemotherapy or radiation as a standard of care. That's happening because anti-inflammatories are coming down the pipe and oncoimmunology, enhancing the immune system. It's very exciting. So the revolution in cancer care is to treat the cancer patient and not the cancer, to enhance vitality and nourishment and state of mind. Don't fear the cancer, fear the oncologist, fear the standard of care. And you have to remedy the cancer stem cell and ignore the cancer tumor cells. That's the paradigm shift. And lastly, understand there's 2 phases of inflammation. I go into that in some detail. In essence, localized inflammation kills cancer. Systemic inflammation fuels cancer. Now, we talk about core thought to eliminate fear. We talk about the epigenetics, detoxify and replenish, oncoimmunology, and anti-inflammatories. Now, that's the revolution in cancer care. And here are some of the references. You know, buy this disc, get these references, go to school. Anti-inflammatory diet and the corrective cancer support protocol. Here are the big guns. Max Dean, Stephen Clayton, Nick Gonzalez, God bless him. Now, Robert Weinberg, one of the top oncologists in the world, he says it's cancer stem cells. Irving Wiseman, same thing, cancer stem cells. Your oncologist studied under these men, and they're not keeping up with them. Google these names in cancer stem cell. It's all summarized here. It's summarized here. Giants in oncology endorse cancer stem cells, okay? This is the paradigm shift. Now, I told Lorraine I'd talk about cancer stem cells. What I really wanted to talk about is coffee. How many people drink coffee? How many people feel guilty about it? All right, this is for you, young lady. No more guilt. Now, this is Lorraine. I really enjoy coffee, but I only drink organic, very smart, and I add a bit of cream to mellow it because I don't like bitter coffee. So, this is the caduceus coming out of a cup of coffee that I asked my daughter Sarah a couple days ago to do, and I love that she did this in no time at all. It's a beautiful logo. Coffee is medicinal. It's a functional food unless you add junk to it. Cream, sugar, Italian soda, aspartame. I mean, don't do that. Don't do that. And then it improves cognition, mood, and energy. It reduces all disease risks except for one. And it really isn't a disease, but they say if you're pregnant, which doctors call a disease, it'll increase your risk of having a bad pregnancy. Coffee is the only thing they found that it's not helpful with is pregnancy. It's the most pesticided and herbicided food that we eat in America, so you got to do organic. Now here's the fun. Is coffee good for you? There's a lot of evidence. Google it. 91 meta-analysis said yes, it lowers morbidity and mortality for all illnesses. Breast, colon, colorectal, endometrial, prostate cancers, liver cancer, decreased risk if you drink coffee. Okay, Parkinson's, diabetes, heart failure. The research is clear. Coffee helps with these until you start adding junk, cream and sugar and aspartame. Now, so the findings of that study were that coffee should be part of a healthful diet. I'm going a little fast because I'm honoring the time here. Now, coffee and the heart. 5 million person follow-up and so forth. They found that these data indicate higher consumption of total caffeine, coffee and caffeinated coffee, decaffeinated, was associated with lower risk. So I want to kick this dead horse for a bit because coffee has recently come out of the bad boy box and now the NIH endorses it. It's healthy. Coffee and stroke. Heavier daily coffee consumption is associated with decreased stroke prevalence. Okay, diabetes. Substantially lower risk of diabetes. Coffee helps with diabetes until you add the cream and the sugar, until you add the Italian soda. Parkinson's. Associated with reduced risk of Parkinson in men but not women. That's probably an estrogenic effect. MS. High consumption of coffee is associated with decreased multiple sclerosis risk. Caffeine, one component of coffee, has neuroprotective properties. Okay, I'm making the point. But in 71, they said cancer was caused by coffee. 81, they said we're not quite so sure. It's a little confusing. 94, they said no association between cancer and coffee, no significant association with coffee and pancreas or bladder cancer. 2007, drinking coffee may protect against liver cancer. Overall increase of coffee, 2 cups a day, was associated with a 43% reduced risk of liver cancer. Coffee for liver cancer. Now, we know the coffee enemas and we know the castor oil packs, but coffee orally is beneficial. Habitual coffee drinking, 2009, reduced of all cancers. Okay, I'm going a little fast because I've got some fun at the end here. NIH study, that's 2013. Coffee drinkers have a lower risk of death. Now, maybe that's because they're having more fun than the non-coffee drinkers. I don't know, but the science is pretty clear. Coffee drinkers were less likely to die from heart disease, respiratory disease, stroke, injuries, accidents, diabetes, infections. Okay? And then 10% lower risk of deaths, 2013. Coffee has over 1,000 compounds that can affect health. Who's heard of a sommelier? Right, you go to a nice restaurant, fancy wine. Who's heard of a cupper? A cupper, especially the Q-level cupper, is a sommelier of coffee. Okay? Now, bear that in mind here. The problem with the coffee research is that, and whenever there's a big study on coffee, I call up the researchers and I say, did you separate the coffee drinkers who had cream and sugar from the coffee drinkers who had black coffee? And they never do. It's inexcusable in my opinion. But nonetheless, even with all the junk that people put in coffee, all the positive benefits. Now, filtered coffee is different from unfiltered. But they find that lowering cholesterol and triglyceride happened with coffee, whether it's filtered or not. So what is coffee? We put sugar in it. I mean, if you're drinking a sugary drink with coffee flavoring, that's different than my black coffee. These are different drinks. Artificial sweeteners, aspartame, of course, horrible. You probably know that Donald Rumsfeld, before he worked in the Secretary of Defense, he helped Monsanto get aspartame passed by the FDA. It's terrible. Stop those artificial sweeteners. Natural sweeteners can be okay. Cream and sugar, bullet coffee. You put a lot of different things in the coffee. But really, an ideal cup of coffee is to be delicious, aromatic, flavorful, to be comforting, social, satisfying, energizing. It should be healthy. please only drink organic coffee. It's the most pesticided food we eat in America. Non-GMO, no heavy metals, not too bitter, no caffeine jitters, no hypoglycemia. And it should be inexpensive. It should be convenient. You know, it should be portable. You can take it to the office, drink at restaurants, and so forth. Now, what is instant coffee? This is a coffee berry. This is what you harvest off the tree. And all this connective tissue, when you roast the coffee bean, this was told to me by a friend who owns a coffee plantation in Panama. When you roast the coffee bean, the beans are roasted. They separate from this husk and from this interstitial tissue that holds the beans together. They sell the beans, and what do they do with the husk and everything else? They brew it up, and then they spray dry it, and they call it instant coffee. He said to me, we sell it to Nescafe, no coffee bean. He said, we sell it to Nescafe, and we call it no Escafe. So the coffee that I'm encouraging you to drink is called Fused. It's infused with seed oils. It's in the booth here, I'll show you. But it is made of the whole coffee bean, but you can drink it instantly because it's finely ground. So the world's healthiest coffee, there's my daughter's logo again, which I'm so happy with as a dad, should be artisan beans, organic, non-GMO, no heavy metals. There's a patent pending process of infusing this coffee with seed oils, pomegranate seed oil, anti-inflammatory oils, black cumin seed oil, grapeseed oil, grapefruit seed oil, and then they reinforce it with Ganoderma, one of the most prized mushrooms. It's an adrenal support. And then it gets ground finely, so you can drink it instantly, but it's not instant coffee. And this is you add it to 7 ounces of hot water. You've got a great creme. It's got a great aroma. There's a sample in our booth, and it's the healthiest coffee. So not only should you, young lady, be enjoying your coffee and having no guilt based upon all the research, but you should be doing organic, and we'll show you the best cup of coffee. Now, a cupper, as I said, is a sommelier, and people who typically need cream, they can drink this black without cream because it's a mild coffee from Brazil and India. People who can only drink decaf because of the Ganoderma, they can drink this without adrenal challenges. You don't get highs and lows, you don't get jitters, you can drink it after dinner, and it's delicious. So, no chemo brain. For those of you who know people with chemotherapy, they need this coffee to help with the chemo brain. I don't need cream in my coffee anymore. I don't get heartburn with this coffee. I thought I could only drink decaf, but I love the Fused. And one of my friends says, you've ruined me. I'm from Seattle, total coffee snob. She said, I used to go and check out all the coffee shops. Now all I drink is Fused. So, let me buy you a cup of coffee. We're on booth 412. This is where you can order the product. I hope that what I've done is I've shared with you the fact that coffee is a tremendously medicinal, beneficial product, unless you screw it up with cream and sugar. Thank you very much.